Pickleball Diaries presents Klyng on the Court with your host, Lily Brown. Let's go!
Hi, everyone. It's our pleasure to have our Klyng Pro, Jeff Edward, to come to our podcast. And he's a very achieved performance coach. Jeff, how about you talk about, give us some introduction about yourself, and then also what is performance coach do?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Lily. So I come from actually a tennis coaching background. So I was a tennis coach from basically age 16 until into my late 30s. And so most of my tennis coaching career was focused on high performance junior coaching. So I was based out of Toronto and spent a lot of time developing and working with high level junior players and had the opportunity to travel and go to a lot of high level competitions with those athletes. And I ended up getting into pickleball about 5 years ago, and I was doing that just basically as something to do in the winter time. So for the first few years that I got into pickleball, I was just doing it as a sort of recreational activity. And after a few years, I decided to start taking it more seriously because I was enjoying it and started working a little bit harder at it and competing and playing tournaments in 2022. And then more recently, I decided to revisit my coaching roots and get back into coaching, but in the pickleball environment. And that's where we are now. And yeah.
Yeah, so what is performance coach? How does performance coaching help us and on different levels for different players?
Yeah, that's a good question. And when we talk about high performance or performance coaching, I mean, really, all coaching is about performance, right? Because presumably most students have hired a coach because they want to accelerate their development or they want to further their development as a player, regardless of what level they're starting at or that they're currently at. So whether you're a brand new player or you're someone who's playing at a really high level and you've been playing for a number of years, a coach's job, or at least coaches have a lot of jobs and a lot of functions, but one of the main things a coach is responsible for is accelerating the learning process with their students. So, that applies to every level. You basically, a coach should be able to identify strengths and weaknesses with a player and then identify what the priorities should be for that particular player, and then define the outcomes of those specific areas of focus, and then have a process of which they can achieve those outcomes. So it sounds like when we say high performance or performance coach, it just applies to advanced players, but really it applies to every level.
Yeah, that sounds exciting because we all want to improve. And so today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is the reception skill in pickleball. Do you want to elaborate on what is the reception skill?
Yeah, reception skills just refer to the ability of a player to receive a specific shot. So it could be you're constantly receiving a ball before you send a ball back. And so if you can't, generally speaking, if you don't have the ability to receive a ball, it'll be really challenging to send consistent and effective shots back to the opponents. So reception skills really just talk about the ability of a player to be in position for the ball, to be in the right position, and to be in position on time. And usually we're talking about the ability of the player to have their paddle and body set up and prepared before it's time to make contact with the ball, and to do that in a timely manner, and to be in a position that makes it easier to send the ball back with efficient and effective technique.
Yeah. So what will be the key elements of a good reception skill in pickleball?
Yeah. Well, generally, if you watch really high level players, so players that are sort of advanced or polished, when you watch them set up and prepare for the shot, they're generally in a good position with good balance. So their body is balanced by the time they're ready to hit the ball, and their paddle is prepared and their body's prepared in the right position, and they usually have a good impact point. So a good impact point depends on the type of shot we're talking about, but generally on most shots we hit in pickleball, we need an impact point that's out in front of our body at a comfortable distance from our body so that we can swing the paddle the way we want to swing it to execute a given shot. So when we talk about what makes good reception or what is good reception or good setup for the ball, we're talking about preparing your paddle and body in the right place and preparing those things on time, which in most cases is either before the ball bounces on your side of the court, or if we're talking about a volley, we might be talking about before the ball crosses the net. We want to have our body and paddle prepared appropriately so that we can execute the shot with good timing.
Yeah. So, how does a player's stand and positioning impact their ability to receive the ball more effectively?
Yeah, so well, stance, the way you prepare your body and the stance you might use on a given shot depends on a lot of things, but a lot of that's influenced by the ball that you're receiving and how much time you have to receive that ball, the height of the ball you're receiving, the speed of the ball you're receiving, but it also depends on what you're trying to do with the shot. So different shots, you might want to use different stances for different shots, but often the stance we use is influenced by the oncoming ball. And a really simple example of that would be, for instance, if we're returning serve and the serve is coming very fast and very deep, and maybe it's even a little bit wide, so it forces you to move sideways. It's hard to have time to get sideways to the ball and step into that ball if it's coming deep and fast. So that's an example where we might use what we call an open stance, where our hips and chest might be a little bit more open to the net or to the oncoming ball because we don't have enough time to get sideways completely and then stride in or step into the ball with a weight transfer. So that's an example of where we might use an open stance because of the ball that we're receiving is sort of dictating the stance we use. Whereas let's say that the serve comes slow and short and it's a weaker serve, we might have more time, or we will have more time to get our body sideways and sort of side shuffle forward and step into the ball and have like a weight transfer, as people like to call it. We can transfer our weight and step into the ball a little bit more because we have time to do that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Do you mind? You just talked about a very interesting shot, one of the most important shot, which is the return of the serves. And I think you made some videos in talking about this, giving the example of this shot. Is that right? Do you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share. Yeah, I did a two-part video series on the return of serve and specifically receiving deep serves and having the ability to send back deep returns. And part one, the first video deals with the ability to receive the ball, so it focuses on the reception skills of the returner. And the second part of the video deals more with the technical elements of the swing and having the ability to send the ball deep the way that you want to send it.
Okay, good. It's amazing. Let's look at the clip right now.
Hi everyone, welcome to part one in this two-part video series about how to improve your ability to send effective deep returns when receiving deep serves. And in this segment, we're going to strictly focus on the reception skills of the returner and how having great setup and reception of the oncoming ball will positively influence the returner's ability to send deep returns. In part two, we'll take a closer look at the technical elements of the swing, but for now, we're just going to focus on the reception of the returner. And when we're talking about what makes a deep return effective, we're generally talking about a return that forces the serving team to attempt their third shot from behind the baseline. And there's many benefits to returning deep. One of those benefits is that it makes it harder for the serving team to attempt their third shot or make a precise and accurate third shot because they're sending the ball over a greater distance. Another benefit to deep returns is if the returner sends the ball with ample height, it can give the returner more time to get into the non-volley zone in a better position for their fourth shot. And another really important benefit of returning deep, especially when we're playing bangers or aggressive players, is if we force the serving team to attempt their third shot drives from farther back, it will give the returner and the returner's partner more time to react to the oncoming ball when they're at the non-volley zone, which makes for an easier fourth shot. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we'll watch a clip of an effective deep return from Catherine Parenteau, who you see at the top left of the screen. This is her partner, Annalie Waters, at the non-volley zone. This is Anna Bright serving, and her partner, Rachel Rohrabacher, over to the right of the screen. And we're going to watch an effective deep return from Catherine and specifically observe the height and speed of the ball and what that does to the depth of the ball and what it does to the serving team. So I'm going to let this clip play here. So if we watch Catherine's return, we're going to observe the height and the speed. So we see the ball going high over the net with enough speed to carry deep in the court. It bounces somewhere around 3/4 court, but ultimately forces Rachel to attempt her third shot from well behind the baseline. Rachel chooses to hit a third shot drop. It's an effective third shot that makes Catherine volley from below the net. But what we'll see after that third shot drop is Rachel's only able to get to 3/4 court by the time she needs to prepare for her fifth shot. So this was a really good example of how a deep return can neutralize the serving team and be advantageous for the returning team. So what we'll do now is we're going to rewind the clip and we're going to look at Catherine's reception skills and how her ability to have great setup and preparation allows her to execute this deep return of serve. Okay, so the first thing we should talk about if we're talking about anticipating a deep serve is we should have smart court positioning well behind the baseline so that we give ourselves more time to react to the oncoming serve. So we can see here Catherine's got a deep court position, and this will give her lots of time to react to the oncoming ball. The next thing that we should have is a good athletic ready position. So here we see Catherine's feet a little wider than shoulder width. Her knees are bent, her paddle is ready. She looks ready to move. Another thing some returners will use is a split step. In this case, Catherine does use a small hop or split step to get ready for the oncoming ball. In this case, the serve actually goes comfortably to her forehand and doesn't challenge her movement very much. So the split step really wasn't needed in this case, but could be useful if the serve came faster and wider. And then the next thing that's really crucial when we talk about good setup and preparation for the oncoming ball is the ability to judge whether the ball's coming to the forehand or backhand, and then to prepare our paddle and shoulders and our body before the ball bounces on our side of the court. So that's what we're going to watch here, is we're going to watch as the ball comes towards Catherine and crosses the net. She reads quickly that the ball's coming to her forehand. She starts to draw her paddle back and turn her shoulders at the same time. And she does all of this before the ball bounces. So this means that she's set up before the bounce and on time, which will allow her to make a fairly rhythmic acceleration or rhythmic swing out to the contact with the ball. And the more rhythm, or the earlier she's set up and the more rhythm she can have when she's swinging, the more control she can have over the swing, which generally leads to better control over the ball. And the next thing that's really important is the impact point at contact. So it's really important that the returner try to position themselves where they can make contact around thigh height out in front of their body at a comfortable distance. So I'm going to see if I can freeze the return here at contact. And here we see Catherine's contact is around thigh height. It's out in front of her body at a comfortable distance. This allows her to make the swing that she wants to make with good rhythm and good timing, which leads to this really effective deep return, which is the outcome she wants. Okay, the other thing you notice is she was able to carry forward with momentum through the contact to get to the non-volley zone pretty smoothly. Okay, so we're going to watch that one more time, and we're specifically going to watch her preparation with her paddle and shoulders and her ability to get in position before the ball bounces. So here we see she's set up before the bounce. That's the critical moment we're talking about. And then by being set up before the bounce, she can make a rhythmic swing out to that good contact point at thigh height in front of her body, and allows her to execute the intention she wants, which is a deep return, and she also gets into the non-volley zone quite easily. All right, so I hope you found that video helpful. And just remember, when you go out to practice your return of serve and your ability to hit deep returns, put a heavy emphasis on your reception of the oncoming ball and your ability to read the oncoming ball and set your paddle and body before the ball bounces, and then try to make a good contact out in front around thigh height at a comfortable distance from your body. And if you do these things, it will make it a lot easier to swing the way that you want and control the paddle through the swing so that you can send the ball the way that you intend to send it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll look at the exact same return, but we'll focus more on the technical elements of the swing and how those technical elements allow Catherine to project the ball deep into the court. All right, that's all for now, and take care. Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 in this video series about how to improve our ability to send effective deep returns when receiving deep serves. In part 1, we looked specifically at the reception and setup skills of the returner and how having great reception of the oncoming ball leads to better sending of deep returns. In this video, we're going to look more closely at the technical elements of the swing after setup and how those technical elements influence the depth of the ball. It's important to note that we're talking about a specific type of deep return here, where we're trying to hit the ball flatter or perhaps with a slight bit of topspin. We're not talking about a slice return in this scenario. So here we already saw in the last video, Catherine did a good job of sending a high arcing ball with enough speed to push the serving team back behind the baseline. And we're going to talk about 3 specific elements that determine the depth of the ball here. And those 3 elements are the path of the swing, the vertical angle of the paddle at contact, so whether the paddle is square, open, or closed. And we're going to also look at the speed of the swing. So the first thing we're going to watch is Catherine's paddle path, and we're going to see that she swings from low to high here. So we see she comes from below the ball just slightly, and through contact and after contact, we see that her paddle travels upward with a low to high path. And this is what helps make the ball arc over the net. But the other thing that's important to note here is that if we're swinging from low to high, we also need to make sure that our paddle angle at contact is reasonably square, so not too closed, not too open. If it's too open, the ball may go too high. If the paddle face is too closed, it may go too low. So generally when we're swinging from low to high, we want a square or 0 degree paddle angle or something close to that, so that we can make sure that the ball goes at the intended height that we're looking to send it with that low to high swing. Okay, so there we have the paddle path, we have the paddle angle at contact. Then we have the speed of the swing, which also contributes to the depth of the ball. And in this case, she swings moderately fast so that there's enough speed on the ball to get it to carry deep in the court without being too risky, so that she can push the person receiving that return back behind the baseline. Okay, so when we're talking about the speed of swing, it's important to note that it's actually really easy to swing fast. Anyone can swing a pickleball paddle fast because they're really light, but what's really important is that we have the ability to swing fast with rhythm, and that we can sort of have a gradual acceleration out through contact so that we can control the paddle face and paddle path as we swing. And this is why it's having great reception and setup for the oncoming ball is so important. If we set up on time, we can swing with good rhythm and make a smoother acceleration to the ball, which allows us to keep the paddle path from low to high and the paddle face fairly square and constant through the swing. Whereas the opposite of that would be as if we set up after the bounce or we set up too late, it can lead to a rush swing, which leads to the incorrect paddle path. It can affect the angle of the paddle face, and it can also lead to swinging too fast through contact, which all lead to a lack of control of the ball that we're sending. So in this case, again, we see Catherine set up early, and this allows her to really control the path of her swing, the angle of her paddle through the swing, and the speed of the swing, so that she can hit this really nice deep return and then get to the non-volley zone. All right, so that does it for part two in this video series. When you're going out to work on your returns, after you put heavy emphasis on your reception skills, just make sure that when it comes to sending the ball the way you want to send it, you have the right paddle path, angle, and speed of swing to achieve the desired return that you're looking for, which in this case is an arcing ball with a moderate or solid speed to get the ball to travel deep. I suggest when you go out and work on your deep returns that you set up depth markers somewhere around 3/4 court and you work on finding that right combination of speed and height, and you adjust accordingly as you practice your returns. All right, that's all for now. I hope you found these videos useful, and we'll see you soon.
So, wow, Jeff, I really like the videos. I really like in the videos you really go into the depths to explain step by step. So what, based on all your analysis, and what do you see the common mistakes players make?
Well, yeah, it sort of depends a little bit on what level we're talking about, but generally, if we're talking about mostly intermediate players or um, one of the easy or most frequent mistakes people make is just starting in the wrong position. So one thing that we determine our starting position when we're returning serve because it's starting from a standstill. The server's getting ready to serve. They haven't actually served yet. So we can determine where we want to stand. And where we stand really depends on the quality of the serve or the quality of the server. So some of our positioning may be influenced by the skill level of the server or the types of serve they generally like to hit. So if we're playing someone who has a moderately strong serve that has the ability to serve fairly deep with consistency, with a good speed on the ball, we want to position ourselves deep behind the baseline so that we have more time to react to the oncoming ball. So I'd say that one common mistake is just court positioning in terms of the up and back court position. Another mistake that sometimes players make is their left to right court position. Um, if you're playing a skilled server who can place the ball, you generally want to position yourself from left to right in a way that lets you have equal ability to move to the forehand or the backhand and get to the ball on time. Whereas we see sometimes players will leave one part of the court exposed. So if you're playing a server who has good accuracy on their serve, they can serve to that opening and maybe stretch you and put you on the defensive, which creates a weak return. So I'd say one of the common mistakes is just positioning.
Yeah. So um, from what you said, if I understand correctly, is your where you stand to receive the ball will based on your opponent's skill. Is that correct?
For the most part, yeah. In a general sense, the one thing we want to do is probably stand behind the baseline a little bit, no matter who's serving. And we
Yeah.
want to stand maybe somewhat close to the sideline of the court so that we can cover serves that come up the tee or we can cover wide serves. But yeah, generally the position, which there's some rules of thumb or principles we should have, but then we'll make adjustments to that court positioning based on the tendencies of the server. Yeah.
Yeah. So if for the players, they when they receive the return, they don't have a strong backhand. And is there any cheap position they can stand to
Yeah.
receive the ball?
That's a good point. And yeah, a lot of players have a weaker side. Usually, it tends to be on the backhand. So if you're returning and you know that you have a weaker backhand, you may, and let's say that you're a right-handed player, so your forehand is on the right side of your body. If your backhand's weaker, you may shift to the left so that you have more chance of the ball coming to your forehand. And so you
Mhm.
can make those little adjustments from left to right based on your strengths and weaknesses. You just have to be careful because once again, if you're playing someone who serves strong and they're precise with their serve, they'll see that you're cheating over and might be able to expose that opening because you're favoring your forehand side. But yeah, that's a good point. Is absolutely returners should adjust their positioning based on their strengths and weaknesses within reason, obviously.
Yeah. Some players, they have varieties of serve, very tricky. They're very good of throwing different types of serves. So as the receiver, to return. Is there any way how to read what the opponent is going to serve at you?
Yeah, so similar to what we talked about in the video, but we also talked about earlier, is generally if you're playing someone who can vary their serve or can give you a lot of variety on their serve and they're skilled, is you generally want to start with your court positioning well behind the baseline so that you have more time to read the oncoming ball. And the more time you have, the more time you'll be able to you'll give yourself to set up your paddle and body in the right position so that you can have a good impact point with the ball and good timing and good rhythm in your stroke. But generally, what you're mostly looking at when you're returning serve is you're trying to respond in terms of quickly judging if the ball comes to your forehand or backhand so that you can prepare your forehand or backhand as soon as possible so you can take your paddle back. And then you're mostly also judging the depth of the ball, and that's a combination of the height and speed. So every shot we hit in pickleball, we have to make these quick ball judgments to read the height, speed, spin, depth, direction of the ball. So when you're returning, that's why it's so important to focus on reception skills so that you can get set up quickly and get in the right position so that you can have a smooth swing and a good impact point out in front of your body.
Yeah. So 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 be prepared. If we go to more details of the techniques, what will be the ideal grip for the paddle when
Yeah.
you're ready to return?
So the grip that you choose to start with in your ready position, a lot of that sort of depends on your game style and your strengths and weaknesses. Generally, for most players, it's suggested that you use a continental grip, which is sort of what people also call a hammer grip or a handshake grip, because you can quickly make small shifts to your forehand or backhand. You can either adjust the grip, or if you're playing with a continental grip, you can actually execute a forehand and backhand return using the same grip where you don't need to actually adjust the grip before you hit. But as you progress and at a more advanced level, you may want to shift your grip to more of a forehand grip, which we call maybe an Eastern forehand. So some players may actually wait in the return of serve with their grip slightly turned towards an Eastern forehand grip so that if the ball comes to their forehand, they have sort of a square or closed paddle angle at contact, and they don't have to make any adjustments out of their ready position. And if you're someone who slices your backhand, that Eastern forehand grip may actually work okay on your backhand without having to make any changes, because an Eastern forehand grip on your backhand leads to an open paddle face, which is actually beneficial for a slice return. But if you're someone who returns more flat or with a little bit of topspin, you may actually have to shift your grip out of that forehand grip and turn it over a little bit on your backhand side to make sure that the paddle face doesn't open up and make sure that the paddle face stays closed. So that's a long answer to a simple question, but generally starting with a continental grip or maybe a slight forehand grip is probably the way to go when you're returning serve. But again, it sort of depends on your style as a player and your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, that's great. Like I really like how you talk about the grip ready position. Do you want to give us some like more shot by shot analysis for different serves and how we can prepare for different returns? For example, like short serve, uh, deep serve, lob serve, and I think especially lob serve. A lot of people already they don't like lobs, and a lot of rec players they really don't like lob serves. So yeah, do you mind to give us some example and so in different scenarios?
Yeah, for sure. I guess to start, yeah, we can receive all sorts of different types of serve in terms of the quality of the serve, the depth, direction, height, the speed. So as a general rule, most of the time we want to have the intention of returning the serve deep. So regardless of what type of serve we receive, most of the time, if we're being smart on a return, we should try to return the ball deep in the court to the serving team to keep them back behind the baseline to limit their ability to sort of impose their game on us. Um, But how we return deep is definitely going to differ based on the type of serve we receive and where we are in the court when we receive the serve or when we make contact on our return. So starting with the example of receiving a fairly a faster or deeper serve, um, in terms of the technique, the quickness or how quickly we prepare our paddle and body to set up for that ball is really crucial because the ball's coming faster and deeper. So we need to set up our paddle and body before the ball bounces so that we can just have good timing with the ball. And usually, if we're returning a faster, deeper serve, the swing that we're going to have is going to be a little bit from low to high at a moderate speed so that we can make the ball arc over the net. Usually, we want to aim at least 2 to 3 paddle heights above the net if we're deep in the court so that we can get the ball to carry deep to the serving team side of the court. And we want to swing at a moderate speed. Obviously, if we swing from low to high and we swing too fast, we may risk hitting the ball too far. So we want to swing from low to high at a moderate swing speed. Now, that's for if we're receiving a deep, fast serve. If we receive a short, weak serve, so let's say it's a moderate arc on the ball that's coming towards us, so it's not too high, not too low, and it's a little slower and shorter, we have more time to get ready. So we should get ready, but then get prepared to move forward and step into the ball. And usually, if we're striking the ball from inside the baseline, so we've moved forward inside the baseline on our side of the court, the distance from us to our opponent's baseline or the serving team's baseline is now much shorter. So we can't afford to hit the ball with as much height because we now risk hitting the ball too far because the distance we send the ball is shorter. So we generally want to level out our swing path when we're returning a short serve. So we want to move forward, and assuming our contact isn't too low or below the net, we want to swing with a more level swing path so that the ball goes lower over the net. Because if we swing from low to high when we're returning a short serve, there's more risk of hitting it out because it's a much shorter distance that the ball has to travel. So generally, when the ball's slower and shorter, we may be more aggressive and speed up the swing a little bit, but we also have to level out the path of the swing to control the height and hit a bit lower over the net.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see the return is closer to a ground stroke, like in general?
Yeah, the return is a ground stroke. So it's a ground stroke where you're starting somewhere around the baseline, and where you make contact depends on the quality of the serve. But it's a ground stroke because the ball has bounced before you hit it. And by definition, that is a ground stroke. So a lot of the principles of hitting regular ground strokes apply to the return of serve. The only difference is it's starting from a standstill because the server has control over when they attempt their serve. But yeah, in terms of like whether we're driving the ball low over the net because the serve is short and weak, or we're aiming higher over the net because we're deeper in the court, there's some fundamentals that are important, and those are the reception skills. So having the paddle and body ready before the ball bounces, and having a good impact point out in front of our body. So those are things that should be present on all ground strokes, whether you're returning serve or just hitting ground strokes in the middle of a rally.
Yeah, I find it's interesting. Ground stroke seems like a strange concept to most pickleball players. I mean, like hobby pickleball players, and that's something. Some shots they really haven't practiced. Seems like it's a lot of thinking, a lot of drops. But if you want, you ask them, "Oh, what is a ground stroke?" It's like something most people, as a hobby player, they never practiced.
Yeah, players that are either new to the sport or players, they might not be new to the sport, but don't have a racket sports background. Um, Ground strokes can be a bit more they can just be more challenging to master because if you come from, say, a tennis background or even maybe a squash or badminton background, you kind of understand the things that influence what makes the ball do what it does. So, like for instance, there's 3 things that actually determine what happens to any shot. So there's the path of your swing. So whether you swing from low to high or level or from high to low, there's also the angle of your paddle at contact. So there's the horizontal angle, which influences the direction of the ball, but there's also the vertical angle of the paddle face. So whether the paddle face is open or closed or square. And then there's the speed of the swing. So if you have a rackets background, or a paddle background of some sort, you understand how the path and the angle and the speed of the swing influence what happens to the ball or determine what happens to the ball. So that's an advantage coming from a racket sports background, but it's important for players who don't come from that background to really understand that after you set up for the ball, you just have to make sure that you have a clear intention of what you're trying to do with your ground stroke, and then the path, angle, and speed of swing should match your intention.
Yeah, thank you. So when you talk about intention, so when we return the serve, is there any ideal position we want to return the ball to? Is that more middle, the side, or towards any specific player, weaker players, back end? What would you suggest?
Yeah. So yeah, again, as a rule of thumb, we generally want to return deep so that whoever receives that deep return from us, so whoever receives it as the serving team, they're having to hit their third shot from farther back in the court, which just makes it harder for them to execute their shot with effectiveness, and also makes it harder for them to get forward to the non-volley zone. But in terms of the left to right placement when you're returning, yeah, generally you may want to return to the weaker player, so deep to the weaker player. That's one strategy. So if they just are less consistent or they don't have an effective third shot, you return deep to that player. So you direct the ball to that player. There's some strategy, or some players out there believe that you may actually want to return to the more skilled player. So if you return your serve to the stronger player, it makes it harder for them to get to the non-volley zone after they hit their third shot. So by returning to the better player, you keep them back, because if you return to the weaker player, as that weaker player is attempting their third shot, the stronger player may be moving forward towards the non-volley zone to put themselves in a position to sort of take over the court and be aggressive and insert themselves in the play. So sometimes returning to the stronger player is a good way to keep them away from the non-volley zone and make them less threatening. And then, yeah, if you see that one of the players has a really weak stroke on their forehand or backhand, you might direct the ball there. And if you don't know who the stronger player is or the weaker player is, returning deep up the middle is always a good strategy, because it's low risk. Because if you aim up the middle and you miss the middle and it just goes a little bit to one side or the other, it's still going to go in the court. It can also cause confusion by drawing both players from the serving team towards the middle, and they don't know who's going to take the ball. So it can cause confusion. So going up deep up the middle is a pretty effective strategy against any team, and it's also fairly low risk, which makes it a good tactic to use.
Yeah. So, and we would like to talk about afterwards.
Mhm.
After you make a good return, a deep return, what do you do? What you're Sometimes I will just look at, oh, this is a great return, and forget to move around. So apart from admiring our great shots, so what should we do right after we send the return? Sometime, can you give us some scenario analysis? If we made a good return, what do we do? If it's a short return, we know it's a bad return. What do we do?
Yeah, as a rule of thumb, at any level of play, you want to use what we call the return and run strategy, which is return the ball, hopefully deep, and then follow it into the non-volley zone. So even at a more intermediate or lower level of play, returning and getting to the non-volley zone is a great idea, or a great strategy to develop. And the reason we want to go to the non-volley zone is we can take away space and time from our opponents. So, for instance, if we return deep and immediately run into the non-volley zone, we give our opponents less space to hit to. And if they hit a ball that's a little bit above the net or high above the net, it makes for a really easy attackable volley for us as the returning team at the non-volley zone. So generally, no matter what, you want to come forward after you return. The only exception would be is if the serve was extremely fast and deep and you just had a really hard time handling it. and you're not able to set up very well for the return. So maybe you hit the return really weak and short, and you're really deep in the court. You might not have time to get forward to the non-volley zone. In that case, you'd have to change your tactic quickly and just decide to stay back. But yeah, at any level, returning and running, it should be something that we're working towards so that we can get to the non-volley zone and take away space and time.
Yeah. So you mean when we're drilling the return, we really should practice the return and the run.
Yeah. Yeah, depending on what you're working on specifically, you might be working on just one specific element, like your paddle preparation, or you might be working on split stepping on the return, something like that. But eventually, after you focus on one thing, you should start to add the forward movement with the return so that it's realistic. So ultimately, when we train, sometimes we do these little progressions where we start simple, but as we train a skill, we should eventually make it more and more realistic so that we have those good habits and so that those skills actually transfer into the game. So for instance, if we train the return without moving forward to the non-volley zone, we might not develop a good ability to move through the contact with the return to seamlessly get to the non-volley zone. So we should always be trying to make it realistic and set the goal of returning and moving our body forward through contact if we can, so that we can just sort of cruise to the non-volley zone fairly effortlessly. So yes, you should practice that.
Yeah, thank you. So now let's talk about a short return. So as you said, if we have our opponent always have a very strong deep serve, we kind of know that. And when you are not able to send back a very quality return, it's short. So what should you be doing? And also what should your partner should be doing to help?
And sorry, this is if the serve is short or the return is short.
Uh, with return is short. If the serve is very strong and deep,
Okay.
fast.
Yeah, if the serve is really strong and you have a hard time receiving it and executing a good deep return or a moderately deep return, if you're deep in the court and you can't get forward and the return you hit is short to the serving team, they're likely going to move forward and attack that, and it may not make sense to go to the non-volley zone in that case. And if it's a really weak return that you've made and your return sort of sits up nice and easy for the serving team to come in and to drive the ball, your partner may also want to take a step or two back off the non-volley zone to give themselves more time to react if they choose to drive the third shot at your partner. So again, if you're the returner, your return is really weak and you can't get to the non-volley zone, and it looks like the serving team is going to come in and drive their third shot, your partner who was already at the non-volley zone may want to back up a step or two to give themselves more time to react to the oncoming drive. Because if they stay there and the drive's coming from really close and the team is good at driving the ball, they won't have enough time to make a good reaction volley or a quality reaction volley. So they may want to back up. And also for safety, if there's a really big drive coming at you from close range, it might not be safe to stand right in front of it. So you want to back up a little bit. But where your partner goes at the non-volley zone sort of depends on their skill level and the abilities of the serving team and their ability to be aggressive with their drives. If you're really good at the net and the team that's driving the ball doesn't hit the drives that aggressively, you can hold your ground at the non-volley zone and just get ready to block the ball back.
Yeah, thank you. So I love everything you talked about. So now how can we take into the action? How do we drill on that skill?
Yeah, good. So you mean just returning the ability to return deep serves?
Yeah.
Yeah, so well, it sort of depends what you think as an individual, what you think you need to work on. So as an example, you might have really good reception skills. So maybe you're really good at preparing your paddle and body on time before the ball bounces. And maybe that's not the challenge for you. Maybe it's just the sending of the ball. So in that scenario, you might make sure that you have a clear intention of what type of return you're trying to hit. So you focus more on like the swing path, the paddle angle, and the speed of the swing. And you just repeat that until you find the right combination of swing path and swing speed to get the ball to consistently go the depth that you want it to go, right? Now, if your main struggle with returning deep serves or deep strong serves is the ability just to get your paddle and body prepared on time, then you might focus on your reception skills and your ability to set up on time. So you might have a partner um, hitting aggressive deep serves at you, and maybe you could focus just on one thing at a time. And maybe that would be just reacting to whether the ball's coming to your forehand or backhand and trying your best to prepare as quickly as possible as soon as you see where the ball's going. So you're just working on your left to right ball judgment and the paddle preparation that goes along with judging the ball. And then maybe once you've worked on that a little bit, you can work on not just the paddle preparation, but also moving your body to wherever the ball's going so that your paddle and body or your shoulders are prepared and turned well before the ball bounces so that you can make a rhythmic swing out to your contact point in front of your body. And that leads to another thing you could work on. Maybe you set up pretty well and pretty quickly with your forehand and backhand, but you struggle with timing the ball out in front of your body or having the right impact point. So you could focus just on trying to have the right impact point, which generally we consider a good impact point to be out in front of your body at a comfortable distance from your body that's not too far away, not too close where you're jammed, just a comfortable distance, and usually around thigh height because we don't want the ball to be too low at contact or too high. So you could work just on having a consistent impact point on every ball. So again, depending on what you think you need or what your challenge is, you can work on different things, but you generally want to isolate one thing at a time and then try and tie it all together after you've had a chance to work on that particular skill. But as a summary, it's important, like we always have to have good reception to be able to send the ball well. It's really hard to have the right swing path or the right swing speed if we're not in position and we're not in position on time, because our ability to set up for the ball, or sorry, our ability to send the ball with good technique is highly influenced by our preparation and our ability to be in the right spot at the right time.
Oh, wow. Love it. Thank you. That's a very in-depth knowledge. And then thank you so much. I think it's a perfect wrapping to the topic today. And looking forward to chat with you soon for the next topic. In the meanwhile, for our audience, if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. And I think we will have a lot to talk about, more about the reception skills, and looking forward to hear more from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lily. Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you. I'll see you soon next time.
See you soon.